dive into the second lesson here in the visualization tutorials about line charts, sort of understanding how to visualize data over time. If you open that tutorial and your own Kaggle account, you will be able to execute the code just like I'm doing, step by step, and sort of be able to follow along and even mess around, play with the code a little bit as well. In this notebook, we're going to look at line charts. In previous videos, you've seen how to make line charts using the pandas library. So this is going to be a bit of a refresher in that sense, really focused on the Seaborn library and some of the quirks that go with that. Here we load the first few libraries, including pandas, matplotlib, and Seaborn. There's going to be a data set used in this tutorial of 5 different songs that on Spotify have had, basically the number of streams, people listening to these songs over the course of 2017, 2018. And we're going to make line charts out of these data to understand like how these songs they changed over that time period. Of course, loading the data, you'll notice that this particular notebook does it a little bit differently. It's actually specifying a file path and then sort of calling that variable as a file path. This is kind of something that's a best practice that a lot of people do when they like to create the file path before putting it into the function. Once again, we're going to create the index column equal to date. We're going to have parse dates equals true. It's going to understand that date column is a date timestamp and convert it to a date time object in the pandas library. So once again, we'll load the first 5 rows. You can see that the date column is now the index. This 2017 January 6th is a date time object. You've got NANs here, so missing data in the very beginning of the data set because the Shape of You as a song was probably the first one that came out. These others hadn't come out at that time or weren't on Spotify, for example. And you can, like it's mentioning here, an NAN, not a number, is its refresher of what that gap is. You can also use the .tail function to look at the last 5 rows. So of course, at the end of this data set, all 5 of the songs have some data, some download data or streaming data. And we're going to look at how to plot this data using line charts. So here you have .line plot once again. Data equals Spotify data. So the attribute within this function is to specify which data frame you get the data from. And boom, all of a sudden here you have this data set visualized as a line chart. Pandas and Python and Seaborn will auto create the legend. It will create the axis. There's an axis label for the date column because that's the index of this data frame. And if we had a column label, we would also see a y-axis label here, but we don't have that. So automatically you can quickly see the different songs as they became popular. Pasito, you can see it really exploded in early around April of 2017 and sort of leveled off over time. You can see this behavior, you can see patterns, you can see kind of this modulating pattern over time. This is likely because, throughout the course of every week, usually people might listen maybe to more music on weekends versus weekdays or vice versa. And we can understand that by maybe zooming in a little bit. The rest of this notebook is going into, okay, we want to make changes to this line chart. We want to modify certain parts of it. And to do that, we can, for example, use the matplotlib library to set the figure size, make it a little bigger. We can add a title to the chart, daily global streams of popular songs. We can plot the line chart. So you can see that this combination of these 3 lines of code using the matplotlib and Seaborn is creating a line chart which has more space, it's got a title, and it just looks more refined, let's say. Maybe you want to plot a subset of the data. So you can look at just the column names and you might say, okay, I want to plot only certain parts of the data with the Shape of You song. I want to plot Despacito separately. I want to look at just those 2 parts of the data frame. And you can do that through this code. There's 5 lines of code now instead of 3 and instead of 1. And each time you add more complexity to the plotting code, you're going to have more control over what's happening in that code. So in this case, you're only plotting these 2 songs by themselves, and you're getting a y-axis label, x-axis label, a title. You've got all the space to visualize and see what happens. You can see when Despacito really overtook shape of you, and you can see the kind of like decay of that signal over time until they basically kind of converged here at the very end. It's really fascinating to kind of see maybe some of the behavior here. Like I said, the variability of over the course of each week. Each of these little humps is probably a week. Here you can see some interesting behavior that's happening on January 1st. So maybe a lot of people are having New Year's Eve parties and they're playing Spotify songs, including these two songs. Well, yeah, you're just seeing all kinds of interesting information that's in there. And in this tutorial, the author is kind of telling you what they've done with each of these to kind of give an understanding of how that's created. So to really solidify your understanding of line charts, you can do the next coding exercise to go into more detail.